unauthorized recording of my personal, not government, my personal cell phone screen by a stranger in this house. Every time I open my phone now, I have to turn back to look at the strangers. And I'm aware of who the strangers were in the house at the time. I will not rest, Mr. Speaker, until justice is served.
No, you said, Mr. Speaker, given 2 on each side, and so on the particular subject matter.
No.
The person on the government side.
No.
Honorable. Hold on, Mr. Speaker. Let me just explain.
Yeah.
And so this must not be trivialized. It must not be watered down in a way that we are sending the message because it's members of the New National Party opposition. It must not be given the same attention as if it was a member on the other side.
Let me state for the record, and I can say so confidently, that myself and members of the House do not, in any way, shape or form, support this particular deal that was done.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today not only as a member of Parliament, but as a citizen who has experienced a grave violation. And this is the first time I'm speaking publicly on this matter. The unauthorized recording of my personal, not government, my personal cell phone screen by a stranger in this house. Every time I open my phone now, I have to turn back to look at the strangers. And I'm aware of who the strangers were in the house at the time. Mr. Speaker, this is more than just a personal concern. It is a matter of principle, integrity, and security. If a sitting member of this House can have their privacy breached in this manner, Mr. Speaker, what does it say about the safety and confidentiality of others? Not just me, our fellow citizens, journalists, even government officials, Mr. Speaker. The seriousness of this matter must not be overlooked. The use of covert surveillance tactics against any individual, let alone a legislator, is deeply troubling, and it raises pressing questions. 1, who is responsible for this act? 2, what was the intention? And 3, how was this allowed to happen in this House of Parliament, an institution that should uphold the highest standards of security and ethics? Mr. Speaker, as I said, this is not just about me. It is a dangerous precedent that it sets. And if such action goes unchecked, we risk normalizing a culture where privacy is disregarded and intimidation is tolerated. It erodes trust in our democratic institutions. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am calling on you. I am demanding a thorough investigation of this breach. Those who are responsible must be held accountable, and immediate measures should be taken to strengthen the security and privacy protocols in this House. We cannot allow technology to be weaponized against individuals for malicious practices. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the Electronic Crimes Act must be enforced in this matter. And further laws must be put in place to protect against such unauthorized surveillance and digital espionage. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, let it be known that privacy is not a privilege. It is a right. Today, it is my privacy that was invaded. Tomorrow, it could be yours. I urge this Parliament to take a stand but the fundamental rights of every citizen we serve. I will not rest, Mr. Speaker, until justice is served. I thank you.
All right. Let me just say at this point that when you have a special sitting, the House deals with the matter only for which the special sitting is called. If the House has to deviate from the special sitting, the individual or individuals need to obtain leave from the Speaker to so do. I understand the Honorable MP situation, right? But this is the procedure. It's done in the standing orders, right? So when a special sitting is called, this is exactly what we come here to do, deal with the matter. If you want other matters to be dealt with, then you seek the leave for such, right? That is done in our standing orders, so let's not forget this, right? It's okay to discuss other matters, but we need to seek leave to so do, according to our standing orders.
Mr. Speaker, what happened in this honorable House at the last sitting that was referenced by the member for St. Andrew Northeast? Mr. Speaker, I don't believe it's just deeply troubling, but Mr. Speaker, I think it really hits to the core of our democracy and our integrity. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. I've had the opportunity to serve in this House on previous occasions. And I want to say with certainty that there has never been what I described as such a vile and disrespectful act committed in this House against a member, and I say against our democracy. Mr. Speaker, it's not simple, and it must never be simplified to just an act against an individual. And for us to be dismissive about this morning would be simply saying that we do not respect the very democracy that this House is supposed to protect. Mr. Speaker, Parliament is supposed to be a safe place. As a matter of fact, it's supposed to be one of the safest places. Not by mere virtue of the rights that it gives to the protection of individuals in this place, but, Mr. Speaker, the world, the nation, expect that members of this House and members in general, people in general, ought to be respected and ought to be protected. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, when we come here, it ought to be without any fear or any intimidation. And what happened in this House, Mr. Speaker, at the last sitting, I am convinced that the ulterior motive must be intimidation, fear, disrespect, Mr. Speaker, among others. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, when my colleague from St. Andrew Northeast made reference to an investigation, I want to add to that, Mr. Speaker. It ought to be an investigation in which every member of this House feel confident in the investigator. It must not just be an ordinary investigation. As a matter of fact, there's been a lot of speculations and name-calling as to who it is and who it isn't and all of that. Mr. Speaker, after the sitting, a young lady gave her experience of what she saw. Mr. Speaker, speaking to another person, that person was sitting on this side of the House. Speaking to another person who was sitting on that side of the House, it's very interesting what that person had to say. And so I'm saying this morning, Mr. Speaker, that I would like that you will take the right, the liberty, the responsibility to ensure that this matter be thoroughly investigated. The findings of the investigation be brought to this House, and the consequences, Mr. Speaker, must send a very strong message that in the history of this House, that such an act must never be committed again. Mr. Speaker, I stress what I said before. It must not be a basic investigation. It must not be just done for being done's sake, right? It must be done, Mr. Speaker, with the highest level of confidence among the members of this House. Mr. Speaker, every single one of us in this House, every single one of us, I am sure, when we open our computers, when we open our phones, there are confidential information, notices, information that you want to access. You're in here in some cases for an entire day. So it is very obvious, Mr. Speaker, that on our phones, on our devices, will be very confidential information. Mr. Speaker, do I have to be turning around to look at who is behind me? I don't know if I trust this person. I don't know if I trust. Mr. Speaker, what are we bringing to this institution? Are we going to say as of today no one should be sitting in the first row in the balcony, Mr. Speaker? What are we going to say? How do you feel, Mr. Speaker? I am afraid, Mr. Speaker, to open my laptop this morning. Because when I come here, I use the laptop that you provide, but I use it sparingly, Mr. Speaker. And I don't need to say why. So anything that I have to look at except that of the order paper, I use my personal computer. Now, I will not open it this morning because I don't have the time to be looking around to see who is behind me. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this to say this is me here. This is another member here. Who will be here tomorrow? And so this must not be trivialized. It must not be watered down in a way that we are sending the message because it's members of the New National Party opposition. It must not be given the same attention as if it was a member on the other side. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish to strongly recommend that not just the investigation be conducted, but that you circulate, you invite response from both sides as it relates to who leads this investigation. We want to feel comfortable that we can trust the results of the investigation. And I appeal to you, Mr. Speaker, you are in charge of this House, and you have an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the democracy, the respect of this House be maintained. We ought not to go to under the established levels that we have had in the past. And Mr. Speaker, I trust that good sense will prevail in that regard. Mr. Speaker, this must not be accepted as normal. And so this morning, I believe that every member of this House must stand in the affirmative that some investigation must be made, action must be taken, and this must never happen in our lifetime and beyond. And so I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I think you've allowed, frankly, the process to act in such a manner that we may be opening a can of worms in the sense that process-wise, you've allowed two persons to speak on matters which you said ought not to speak.
Say it again?
I said you've allowed two honorable members, or three, to speak on matters which you said ought not to be addressed at a special sitting.
Of course.
The problem, Mr. Speaker, is then you'd have on record 15 minutes of matters going on the record, which I feel, in the way in which it's presented, although it's directed to you, and I'm hearing about both members of the House having trust and confidence in an investigation and so on, may, frankly, in my view, if there isn't a response from this side, convey the wrong impression about what is being said and about what happened.
All right. So I create balance to on the side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I will go first by saying a couple of things. First, as I understand it, somebody took a photograph of the Honourable Member for St. Andrews Northeast's phone, and either themselves published it publicly on social media or some other platform, or sent it to someone who published it. Let me state for the record, and I can say so confidently, that myself and members of the House do not, in any way, shape, or form, support this particular deed that was done. And if the Speaker and the House has the capacity to find out who did the act, in my view, they should be held to account. I will go on record and say further that I'm aware that Mr. Dwayne Thomas, who is the official photographer for the office of the Prime Minister, was accused of doing so, and Mr. Thomas is right here. And I don't expect him to do so. He's right here. He's under your jurisdiction, and you could ask him and put a question to him right now whether he did such a thing. And I will go further and say he's prepared to make his phone and other devices available that he takes his work with and subject it to you or anybody else to verify the data captured on that date and time in relation to his phone. So I want to state that clearly. Thirdly, and I want to make it clear, the people who sit here on this side of the House is not responsible for the actions of individuals. And I will go on record as well as saying that if it is a supporter, sympathizer, etc., of the National Democratic Congress, that in no way, shape, or form should take away from the fact that I certainly don't think that that behavior is appropriate and should be accepted. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I also want us to not embellish and exaggerate and engage in hyperbole and conspiracy theory about what happened. What happened is that someone's phone, a photograph was taken, and it was published. This is not a private place. This is the House of Representatives, and members of the public are entitled to come. If this computer is on, someone sitting there can, in fact, possibly, the eyesight is good enough, read what's on it. And the idea that we could somehow prevent or stop them from reading out it or even taking notes of it is frankly foolish, impractical, and makes absolutely no sense. Third, we also have to deal with the realities of the time. The realities is that we collectively post all kinds of things about all kinds of things that we do on social media. All kinds of stuff. So this notion about privacy when you're a public official is one that you have to be careful about, because the reality is, on any given day, we're on our phones all over the time, all over the place, people take pictures of it and do whatever they want. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, you may be entitled to privacy in the confines of your home or in the confines of private property. But the reality is, as public figures, what privacy are you entitled to in a public space carrying out public duties? Certainly, someone is not entitled to breach your personal space or attempt to intimidate or assault you or any of those kinds of things. But as public officials, in the public, carrying out public functions, you must be subjected to scrutiny. Someone may take a photo of you that you may not like, but the fact is, they're not doing anything wrong. They're not breaching your privacy. So we need to understand that we can, on the one hand, want to show the public everything we're doing, even in private spaces, and not realize the inevitable snowball effect of some of that permissive and exhibitionist culture that we, as part of the social media era, are part of. So I just want to make sure that there is balance in this. As far as we're concerned, Mr. Speaker, you are free to investigate this matter as you so wish. You don't have to consult us about no investigator. You don't have to consult us about terms of the investigation. You are the Speaker, and you have absolute free rein in conducting any inquiry or investigation that you may so wish to. And as I said, at least for those who are under charge, in terms of the persons from either the government office itself or from the Prime Minister's office who are responsible for content creation, data collection, photographs, etc. I'm putting it on record that they are available to be questioned, and on the date pertaining to the matter, the data is available. So we, on our side here, have no issues whatsoever with any inquiry. And I repeat, it is not something I support. It is distasteful, but we have to be careful about distaste, because taste is subjective, and some suggestion of some wider, grander conspiracy theory. So I just wanted to sit on record, Mr. Speaker, our position on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. No, you said, Mr. Speaker, given 2 on each side, and so on the particular subject matter.
No.
The person on the government side.
No. Honorable.
Hold on, Mr. Speaker. Let me just explain.
Yeah.
The first person on the government side spoke on matters in relation to her ministry, her government portfolio as a minister. This particular subject is an incident that happened in the Parliament of Grenada. And you said, Mr. Speaker, that you've given 2 on each side. You give 2 on the opposition side.
Yeah.
Then I expect you to give 2 on the government side, because you said, Mr. Speaker, you're giving 2 on each side.
Yes,
so I ask for your permission to add my voice for 1 minute.
Let me hold please. Let me say exactly what I meant. It's a special sitting, and I said before that we simply have to deal with matters before us, and that's it. Then those are my words. It so happened that other MPs wanted to speak, even without getting leave from the House, from the Speaker. So I said just now that I allowed 2 persons from this side and 2 persons from this side to speak. Right? To speak. Not on a particular matter, to speak. So that is done. It's now for the adjournment. It's a special sitting. So let's stick to it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a bit unfortunate that that's the situation. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the adjournment. I now move that the House be adjourned. Signed it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.